My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
My name is Beef Pork Ribs. I'm a fine repository of esoteric knowledge, which I suppose most people would qualify as geeky. Though I dabble in many fandoms, my main areas of expertise are anime, movies, and Belgian comics, with a strong recent insurgency of D&D.
Our mission is to bring nerd and geek culture to the masses
by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, comics, graphic novels, TV, cartoons, animation, nerds are geeks, entertainment culture. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power. Nerds and geeks, come gather around the scene. Come and join us in the Bat Jar. Come and tune into Average Joe and his team. Lots of room here in the Bat Jar. When the newest nerdy news drops, these podcast pals put it under the scope. DC, Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, cinematic, multiverses, mega Christmas, strangest franchise. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power.
Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd and geek culture, at least for a few more episodes, under the microscope.
Under the Gatling microscope.
That's terrifying. Why the idea of a microscope that's like a Gatling gun?
Well, actually, the idea I had in my head when I said that was like that the parts that rotate,
thing.
yeah, would be like a Gatling gun because
Like a minigun?
It's called a revolver, right? So I think, is it called a revolver in English? In French, it's called a revolver.
Probably.
Which
makes sense.
Is a type of gun. So it would just be like I was thinking less at like the speed of fire in a machine gun, more like having more different zoom objectives on the revolver.
Rapid fire perspectives this week, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So as we're winding down the podcast and we're getting to our final episodes, we've put an invitation out to all of our former guests to come back and join us to be part of our final conversations. And good old Professor F, who I think you'll forever hold the record of having been in the episode that has the most downloads.
Yeah, for some unknown reason.
So welcome back to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Thanks. It's great to be back.
It's the F factor.
Yeah, I think you were last here when we talked about Apollo 13.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, yeah.
I don't even remember when that was.
Well, we were living together.
I don't remember either, so.
We were living together at Bakervale still, and I'm coming up on 2 years of marriage, so before that.
So yeah, you and Knit Stitch weren't married yet when we did that.
No, but she was on that, that's right, yeah.
That would be another interesting thing for you. If you just went through all the people who were on the podcast, but where they were at on their first appearance and where they're at now. I mean, not as an episode, but just like as a reminiscence kind of thing.
Yeah, I just looked. Our Rescue Bots episode came out in March 2019.
Yeah.
To date, it has 2,522 downloads.
Wow.
The next best episode has 489 downloads.
That's so crazy. You need to start a business in like reviewing children's shows. Apparently there's a need for it.
Yeah, that was kind of my hope, was like maybe Professor F is the X Factor. So we would brought you back for other episodes that did not really do as well.
I wish.
Yeah. Well, I am back from my honeymoon from the Disney cruise, and let me tell you, it was an amazing experience. I got to meet Goofy. Donald Duck tried to steal my wife. When he went to take a picture with him, he kissed her hand. And so I was naturally like, hey, what are you doing? So I put my hands up as if I was going to fight Donald Duck, and sure enough, he responded by putting up his dukes. We almost had a brawl.
A sailor.
Yeah.
Donald really gets the short end of the stick. We're on a cruise ship, everything's all themed around sailing, and yet Mickey's the one who's the captain, not Donald, who's normally a sailor.
True, but Mickey has the precedent of, wasn't that his first appearance, was spinning that wheel on the ferry boat?
I suppose so, but you would argue in the history of Disney media, Donald is the one, he dresses like a sailor all the time.
Yeah, but then again, being a sailor and a captain is not the same thing, he takes a lot of orders, and
Hmm.
that tends to be a theme with him and other things. He does tend to not be his own boss most of the time, whereas
Fair enough.
Mickey is always the boss.
We had a pirate night on the cruise, so everyone was encouraged to dress like a pirate, and there were people dressed in like full on like pirate themed cosplay, like Pirates of the Caribbean costumes. They had toy swords and pirate hats that you could buy at the store for like the kids. Like they went all out. And then there was like a party on the deck on the pool deck where Mickey and his friends all come out dressed as pirates and like, oh, you want to join our pirate crew? And Donald's like he's like, they're not gonna be any good at this. And so like, let's prove Donald wrong. And so they
Poor
teach
Donald.
us. Yeah, and Donald's off in the room going like, and so we like do like these 5 different things to prove that we're pirates, and then that's enough for Captain Mickey. Let's join his crew. Only for Captain Hook and Mr. Shmee to arrive immediately to take over the ship, and he will only leave if we can prove that we're real pirates. So we had to show Captain Hook all of the songs we learned and the dances we learned, and we had to ask like what a pirate loves the most. It was, I had a grand old time.
I'm surprised it wasn't Jack Sparrow.
He was on the boat. Like there were like characters you could get pictures with, and there was someone who very convincingly looked like Captain Jack Sparrow that was there taking pictures.
There you go.
And
I
were
feel
you-
like if I was ever go on a cruise like that, Mjolnir would bring a full Jack Sparrow cosplay just for that.
Were you guys given advance notice? Like you were given fair warning to bring pirate costumes on this cruise?
Yeah.
Okay.
It'd
Yeah, I
be
think
funny
we-
if people just had a pirate
Yeah.
costume because they went on a cruise.
maybe
like,
it's like-
just in case.
They've been multiple times and they know the drill.
No, it seems like there's different. Like every cruise does something a little different. But
Ah.
yeah, we knew like months in advance there was going to be a pirate night.
Okay.
We also had a formal night where we had to dress like shirt tie dresses for
Oh.
dinner. There was another night called semi-formal night. So like 5 out of 7 nights you could wear whatever you wanted to dinner clothing wise. But then I guess 4 nights was normal. Then 1 night was pirate, semi-formal, and formal.
It's fun.
But yeah, you meet some interesting people on cruises. Let me tell you, there was one day it was called a sea day, where basically you're just driving in the boat the whole day, getting to your next location. And I sat in a pool in like the adults only section of the ship for like 4 hours. And I don't know what it is, the atmosphere, or the drinks, the alcoholic drinks.
Both.
It's not like drinks aren't included. Like you have to pay for
yeah.
alcoholic
Yeah.
beverages. But people just start telling you their life stories. And boy, let me tell you, I've definitely got some stories to tell about things people have experienced. And there was one kind dentist. He and his wife bought everyone in the pool free drinks like 5 times.
Wow. Dentists make good money. Especially
Supposedly.
certain types of dentists.
I met one guy. He was like 79 years old, and he explained to us that he was retiring after 50 years of being a lawyer. It's like, that's impressive enough. And then he tells us that he actually like moved to Florida in the late 60s as a physicist.
Huh.
And he ended up working for NASA, like on the,
Like the Apollo missions?
yeah. And he did that for a few years, and then was like, actually, I'm gonna move on to something else. And so he's like educated as a physicist and a lawyer.
Wow. Almost sounds hard to believe. That's a lot of schooling.
I know.
At the very least.
So maybe he wasn't a physicist like fully like doctored up, but he was certainly like working in physics.
Yeah. Wow.
And made that shift. I'm like, good on you, man.
Huge shift.
Anywho, if anyone ever, we're not sponsored by Disney Cruise Lines, but I will say, if the opportunity ever presents itself, I would certainly recommend doing a Disney cruise. The nice thing about doing Disney cruises without kids is that, on a normal cruise ship, there might be some kids, but they're generally geared towards adults. So that means that the adults only sections of the cruises, whether it's a boat deck or a restaurant or whatever, are very full. But on a Disney cruise, at least a quarter of the people on the boat are children.
Yeah.
And so therefore the adults only sections are
Ah,
chiller, quieter, more relaxing.
that's smart.
So food for thought.
Yeah.
I will say it's not cheap, so certainly like start saving your pennies now, especially for us Canadians because we have to travel by air to get to where most of these cruises take off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, air travel is very expensive these days.
Yeah.
Yep. On that happy note, as we're winding down the podcast, we've already decided what our final episode is going to be about. The next episode, which will be the penultimate episode, we haven't decided on yet, but it just seemed like due diligence should be done. Everyone knows that this podcast has been built upon the idea of pulling topics out of the bat jar and then discussing them for entire episodes. And despite our best efforts, the bat jar is not yet empty. So this episode is going to be all about trying to essentially speed run through everything that's remaining inside the bat jar, because obviously we don't want this podcast to finish with their things still undiscussed in the bat jar.
Well, I'm a good guest to have for a speed run because I have a very limited set of knowledge. So you may have a no comment from me for a lot of topics, which will help with the speed.
Oh, I thought I was gonna learn something new about you, that you actually do speedrun some video games. I was like,
Yeah, no.
Would not have thought that.
Yeah.
I have not looked, so I have no idea how many things are left in here. So
it's gonna be 2.
So you guys can confirm I do indeed have the bat jar here.
We
Confirmed.
heard it. We've seen it.
Taking off the lid. And it looks like there's about 6.
Okay.
Oh, that's okay. That's good.
So first thing I pull out is a pen. This is a Bic Round Stick M pen. I'm guessing it colors blue. What do you guys think of this pen?
I don't know if it's movie material, to be honest. I'm thinking it's a bit straightforward.
I don't know. Maybe a TV show if you had several other pens of different color to add more representation.
Yeah.
Might work.
All right, first actual topic. Supernatural.
Oh wow, that would have been a long episode. Which, funnily enough, I could have said absolutely nothing about before I got married. Because I was vaguely aware there was a show called Supernatural, and I knew at some point there was this very big fan fiction universe, which was I can't remember what the third one, but it was Supernatural, Doctor Who, and something else.
Harry Potter? Harry Potter?
No, it was 3 TV shows.
Oh.
It might have been Hannibal. It was a weird thing, but it was like 3 shows that were really pretty big. So maybe it wasn't that, but it was Super Wholock. Yeah, Sherlock. That was the third one. It was called Super Wholock. So, because I guess the 3 of them were pretty popular at the time. But now I've seen more of the show than I wish I had, because it's well, it has that the second half of Buffy the Vampire Slayer problem, right? Where like the creators originally had a plan for a certain amount of seasons, but then the show was so popular they kept going. Actually, I think for both of those shows, there was a plan for 4 seasons, and Buffy ran for 8, and Supernatural ran for 15.
What?
So, yeah.
Wow, I had
like,
no idea.
I think I'm in like season 11 or 12, and it's like,
Does it get repetitive? Because
it gets repetitive. It gets ridiculous. It also like has no conception of power scaling. Like there's immense power creep, and like all the badly written anime tropes are in Supernatural. Like where like, the first time there's a demon, he is so strong. He is so unnaturally strong. There's absolutely no way to beat him except with a special gun that was specifically made to kill demons, and even there they might teleport out of the way. But by season 9, like Sam and Dean are just like punching, fighting hand to hand with demons, like absolutely no problem. So there's like that whole problem. They literally beat the devil at season 4, and then they had to get stronger or different people, and it's a weird one.
Have you ever watched Supernatural, Professor F?
I have not. This is far exceeding my knowledge so far.
You've heard of the show, though?
I have. I had no idea it ran for so long.
Yeah, it was It was
It's
very
crazy.
very popular for the CW standards. Like CW
Yeah.
is like a cable channel in the US. It's not one of the major
Okay.
networks, so
Yeah, but it has like it also has like a pretty dedicated fan base as
Yeah,
well.
it must.
it actually got a spin-off like after it ended. Jensen Ackles, who plays one of the main characters, produced and pitched the idea of like a prequel about their parents.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
And it went on for like 2 seasons and it just recently got canceled. You would
Yeah,
think
because
after
it's a terrible
15
idea.
years that like the shit that'd be enough, but no, it got a prequel too.
What was that one called?
Yeah,
It was just called The Winchesters
The
because that's
Winchesters.
the main characters'
Okay.
parents' names or like their last name.
Well, it's their last name as well.
Yeah. What I
But
remember
it's-
about Supernatural, at least in the beginning, was Jensen Ackles had been on Smallville. He was like a main character in the 4th season of Smallville, and then they kill
Oh.
his character off like in the season finale, and then all of a sudden he's on this other show on the same network like the next year.
because the thing I remember that was funny is that Jared Padalecki, the other main star, was on Gilmore Girls before that. But there's an episode in the show in which they leave the universe of the show to go into a universe where they're actors in a TV show. Because I mean, when you run a show like that for 15 years that ran out of ideas after 4 seasons, they jump
Yeah.
the shark quite often.
Yeah.
You know, and that was one of the things, but that was, yeah, they made a joke about that in the show, that he had been on Gilmore Girls, but I think, I can't remember, but I think there is an episode of the show where Gilmore Girls is actually referenced. So it's one of those weird things where it's like, you know, it's a show in which other TV shows exist, but some of
Yeah.
the actors on the TV show were on the TV show that exists in the universe. It's kind of
Yes.
that weird thing, like how Superman, you know, Superman or Batman existing in some Marvel universes,
Now,
like the comics.
something that I think is unique about Supernatural, and you can correct me on this, is that there's really only like a handful of series regular actors who are in every episode because it's like they're traveling around,
Yeah.
which I guess there's other shows like that, like Murder, She Wrote, or what's that one, Quantum Leap? I feel like that's probably one where there's a lot of like new characters every week, but
Quantum Leap a bit more, because like Murder, She Wrote still very often was around that one New England village where she lived, right? Like it was because like the sheriff was in a lot of episodes,
Right.
because she lived in the same region. Like there were still, you know, that thing about, you know, murder mystery shows where an unnaturally large amount of murders
Yeah.
happen in this geographical area that happens to have a detective in it.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I watched a lot of Murder, She Wrote when I was a kid. My mom really liked Angela Lansbury and the show itself.
The Littlest Hobo is another example.
yes, that's right.
Yeah. And the
The
other
other-
thing about like Supernatural is even some of the regulars just quit after a while, like on more or less good terms, just because the show mutated so much. Like one of the guy who was a pretty regular actor eventually was just like, yeah, they were messing up my character. I didn't like playing him anymore, so like they eventually wrote him out, but he was really upset about it and like refused, like still to this day doesn't like talking about Supernatural.
Wow.
And is like, no, I'm never gonna do it again because it was kind of, yeah, they ruined my character and I didn't like it.
Huh.
I feel like some actors who were on that show got bigger, like Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Didn't he like play their father on like originally, and then he ended up being on The Walking Dead?
Yeah, he's the governor, right? Or
No, he's the. I haven't seen The Walking Dead in a long time, but I know he has like a baseball bat with barbed wire on it.
I thought that was the governor.
Negan, that's who he
Oh
is.
right, yes, yeah, he is.
But oh, and last thing I'll say about Supernatural, we've talked about it before in our Scooby-Doo episode, but they did a very,
Yeah.
very famous episode of Supernatural. If you can imagine this, Professor F, where Sam and Dean, the main characters, get
Yeah.
sucked into a TV, and then the rest of the episode is animated, and they're like in the Scooby-Doo universe, and
That's fun.
they solve a mystery with the Scooby Gang, and
Wow.
That episode is honestly the only reason I'm still trudging through the show is to get to that episode. And I'm probably gonna call it quits.
see, I just went straight to that one episode because it's all on.
Yeah,
Prime
probably
Video.
it would have been a smarter thing to do.
Yeah. So Supernatural, I tried watching it a few times, it just wasn't for me. So I'll give it for the Scooby episode alone, I'll give it a Thin-Sation Bat Cookie.
Yeah, I can give it a Bat Cookie for the first 4 seasons, and then Thin-Sation for the rest, going towards Noogie. And apparently the finale is a massive Noogie, so maybe don't go to season 15.
How about you, Professor F? Do you want to, based on what you've heard?
I mean, I would abstain, but that Scooby-Doo episode alone sounds like it's worth at least, like, I don't know, half a bat star.
A bat
cookie,
star.
bat cookie. Yes. I'm kind of rusty. Sorry. Bat star. I don't know. It's got a good ring.
Batarang.
Oh. This is going to be a hard one to do because this is the Disney all-time ranking of their animated movies.
Right, we never did that.
Wow.
Because we have done like rankings for like basically every era of Disney up until Raya and the Last Dragon, which I suppose would exclude like Encanto.
Yeah.
And
Luca.
yeah, I guess just that. But
wait, is Luca Disney?
It's Pixar.
Which is
Pixar. Okay,
Disney.
yeah.
Maybe that should be our episode
Oh,
for next week. Is like because we did do these like definitive rankings, like what are the best movies from each era.
And this just says Disney. It doesn't say, like, does that include the TV shows on Disney Plus?
Well, no,
this
this was meant to represent like because we had been doing like because we did these whole bracketed systems where it's like ranking. So my imagining was like it'd be like the playoffs where like the best 4 from each era would compete, and
so this is the finals. This is like the.
If we don't think of anything better for next week, I think that would be a good thing to do.
Okay.
Like a nice,
if we don't do it, all I'll say here is that it was actually really fun to kind of like go through each era and like because like it was peer ranked, right? Like we invited everyone in our Bat Jar community to like send in their own rankings.
Right. I remember that.
And
thing is, if we do that, can I petition to have Encanto be included, because it is, I think, far and away the. Well, except for maybe is Moana still in the same? Because like Encanto
we did up until 2020,
really
so Raya and the Last Dragon was like the most recent movie.
Yeah, no, Encanto is very good.
Yeah,
maybe we'll have to include it as like like in the playoffs. There's teams that get like a bye the first week.
A wild card bye.
Wild card. So if we don't get to it, I'll just say it was a lot of fun doing those episodes and getting like a deep dive into the different eras of Disney. And to prepare for those episodes, I like binge watched. There was this one YouTuber who did these really excellent retrospectives on like the history of Walt Disney Animation.
Oh, nice.
Don't remember his name, but quality stuff.
And if we're doing random recommendations, we don't end up doing it. Shafrillis on YouTube definitely has done that. He's done a lot of ranking videos about animated shows, and it's a good channel, so I'll plug it for like the 5 people who will listen to this episode.
Yeah, I'm looking back in our timeline. May 2021 was when we did the Disney movies between 2010 and 2019. So actually, it wouldn't have included Raya and the Last Dragon. And then we did 1961 to 1968. We did so that would take a lot of work to put that together, but it might be a good idea. What else we got here?
But if you just take like the top 4 from each of the episode we did and do like have like an actual like heads to head debate about them instead of like
that's what I was imagining.
Yeah.
All right, next one. Heroes without secret identities.
Oh. Were we gonna do a whole episode about that? I mean,
because my thinking was, the MCU has existed all this time with most of the heroes not having secret identities, which was like a real staple of superhero media, like back in the 40s. We've done an episode specifically on secret identities, and I think this was like spun out from that. Be like, hey, like maybe it's time to talk about heroes that don't have secret identities. Or
does that include like somebody like Wonder Woman, because she does technically have an alter ego somewhat, but not really. Like
I think the earliest comics really emphasized that she did have like an alter ego and a human name, and lived life as a human. But I think more modern stuff is like she's just kind of known as like a celebrity almost, or like a political figure.
I mean, Also interesting would be villains that don't have, because there is that aspect too. Like, although I guess they tend to have less of a secret identity because they kind of completely become the person.
They want to be known too. They want to have that notoriety.
Or do you mean characters like Kingpin who don't like have an alter ego, but they also like are like they're not known for?
I guess I was thinking more just like Victor Von Doom, who's like straight up just a dictator in an Eastern European country and also an arch enemy of the Justice League, the Avengers, but like nobody really does anything about it. Like
people will scream at you if you like. He's more the Fantastic Four's arch enemy than the Avengers.
Fine, but okay, but he takes on, but he is classically, but he's also taken on the Avengers as much as a lot of Avengers villain. I just don't want people done more damage to them than most of.
I don't want people in the imaginary comments section freaking out.
Okay, fine. I do know he's a Fantastic Four villain, but the other thing is like, I guess this isn't Avengers either, but the first comic I encountered him in was Secret War. The one with the Beyonder where they all get teleported to a planet. It's Secret War.
Sure.
I can't remember, but yeah, and he's just like the arch villain of that entire thing eventually. So it's kind of like he takes on like the X-Men and most of the Avengers and Magneto and most of the villains.
Yeah. Now here's a question. This kind of coming out of the episode on secret identities. We were posing the questions like, is it even realistic for people to have secret identities in a world where there's social media and drones and facial recognition? It's like, could anyone, if anyone tried to be a superhero now?
Because if you're wearing a mask, that can take away the facial, but voice recognition alone.
Yeah, it's like, is it actually like is it an antiquated, kind of like how like, Clark Kent got a job at a newspaper because that's how you found out what was happening. Yeah. Is like, is a secret identity and actually like holding on to that, and then anonymousness, is that actually like just impossible thing now?
I mean, interestingly enough, The Boys kind of talks about that because there is a lot of like social media, and sometimes some of the heroes are trying to be a little more low key, but I feel like it would open up like a really interesting like DC comic arc about Batman trying to still keep his identity secret in a social media world where he like basically like Elon Musk's Twitter and like just all of these things to make sure it doesn't happen, like not just for himself but for the other superheroes too. I think that would be kind of interesting because you basically would need to have that level of influence and money probably to do something completely anonymously. But
yeah, I think Bruce Wayne does the way they approach his secret identity is more believable because he has all of this money and resources and technology. I think for some of them, it was never meant to be believable in the first place. Even in pre-social media days, like we're expected to believe that Clark Kent, because he puts on a pair of glasses, is no longer recognizable as Superman.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it depends on like why the heroes did it too, because like I don't know, I feel like that was something that I always found was a little weird again with Superman, is like he can protect the people he loves fairly easily. Like if a threat level is at the point where he can't protect Lois Lane and his parents, then everybody's in in a lot of trouble at that point, right? Like,
I mean, the movie Batman versus Superman shows you what happens when his identity gets out and he's not able to. But I think for him, it was more so he wanted to be able to like turn off being Superman. Like he wanted to be able to like live a normal life without everyone kind of hounding him all the time to be Superman.
And then you could get into is it responsible for superheroes to have a secret identity? Like,
well, and this brings in questions like regular law enforcement, like actual emergency services, people who are, everyday heroes don't get the luxury of having a secret identity. So why should these, illegal vigilantes get that license?
Are we just about to reenact Civil War? That is basically.
Well, even like in something like My Hero Academia, it's like you have all these superheroes who have like, a double identity, a code name. They'll wear masks, but their identities are publicly known. So it's like, what's even the point?
Yeah, at that point, it's just kind of aesthetical, like an aesthetic thing, which I kind of get as well, like, because there is, I don't know, that history behind it, I guess. But in most universes, I guess it's not in universe to have that history unless you're like, you know, looking at the Watchmen. Would you consider Rorschach to be one of those? Because like,
well, he had a secret identity until it was exposed.
Kind of, but at the same time, like, he didn't really feel that was it, right? Like,
no, I guess not. He saw his identity as Rorschach and not what it looked like. But you bring up Doctor Doom, and that brings us to the Fantastic Four, because they're one of the earliest examples of like a team of superheroes who, like, you know, have code names, but their identities are publicly known, like their address is publicly known, and they kind of have the same excuse Batman has of like being rich and being able to like afford security systems to protect themselves from supervillains and
being the most intelligent man in the world. And
like, I remember there's a scene from one of the movies where Sue Storm like walks the room and she's like, the police are trying to bill us for like these cars that were destroyed during a fight last week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a fair point. So, like, because you would need to have a certain level of accountability, which also makes, like, you know, because that's the flip side of like the Batman one is like, who other than Bruce Wayne would Batman be? Because of some of the things, because I remember, like, you know, the first episode where Ra's al Ghul shows up in Batman the Animated Series, he has figured out that Bruce Wayne is Batman, because it's like, well, who else would have that amount of resources and technology and be able to do these things, right? And there's like a similar thing in the Nolan films where like Bane knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and it's ambiguous whether he figured it out or it's because he of the League of Shadows intel, but like,
and this is why they did a story called Batman Incorporated at one point in the comics, where Bruce Wayne came out publicly and said he had been funding Batman for years and was basically like saying, I'm willing to like pay for every country to have their own
I
Batman.
was paying for it.
Yeah.
Well, because it's like it's that thing, like, because I can't remember which one it was, but there's this one version of the Justice League where it isn't that Bruce Wayne donated the what's the name of the satellite headquarters?
Watchtower.
The Watchtower. It's just, it was made, and it's like, okay, but like, who in the world is rich enough to make that? And, you know, it was a strange one. I think the other thing about like the secret identity, like, which I think you wanted to mention, was, you know, is it possible? I think it always required a certain amount of like suspension of disbelief, but it's fallen so much into a trope now that it just kind of like is accepted. And I think, like, I don't know, like, I don't think it's necessarily, like you said, the era of social media that's making it less, you know, believable than it used to be. I think it was, like Professor F said, it wasn't ever really believable. Not really. So, like, I don't know if there is necessarily a need to make it like more of a thing now that there is social media and there is kind of that recognition. I think it's just,
it would be fun to see someone explore that, though, just for the fun of it.
I mean, there's, you know, superhero movies have been so oversaturated. We are kind of seeing an increase in like deconstructivist media about it, so it might happen.
Yeah.
Well, Professor F, you're the more casual fan here. I know I have my bias, but like, if they stopped doing superhero or, you know, adventure stories where secret identities were a thing, like let's say they just moved to like everyone was like the Fantastic Four, or like Iron Man, the MCU, where it's like he's got the code name in the suit, but everyone knows it's him. Like, would you be okay with that?
I guess so. I hadn't really given it too much thought until tonight when you mentioned kind of that most Marvel, or did you say most DC? But there really does seem to be this split between the two. Now that I think about it, it seems like most DC characters that I can think of, the Flash, Batman, Superman, I guess even Wonder Woman, as you're saying, have secret identities, whereas most Marvel don't. The only one I can think of, I'm sure there are other examples that you guys can think of, but the only one I can really think of is Spider-Man. But I think the MCU and its success, and I am part of that success. Like I went out and paid to see most of those movies as well, and enjoyed a good number of them. Like the MCU and the whole Infinity Wars Endgame series proves that it can be done. Like, you know, you can make very good superhero movies where the vast majority of the characters don't have secret identities. Yeah, there's fun things you can do with that, I guess, but it doesn't have to take away from the experience either, I think. But what is another Marvel character with a secret identity? Is there any?
Spider-Man?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the MCU proper, there really haven't been like Spider-Man
Okay.
literally had a whole movie about his identity getting
Yeah.
revealed. The closest I can think is Daredevil on the Netflix show because he definitely had a secret
Right.
identity.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, I was thinking of Daredevil versus I said the Flash, but yeah, you're right. Daredevil, and that's Marvel. Yeah.
Like some of the newer ones, like Moon Knight and like Ms. Marvel. Although She-Hulk definitely doesn't. So like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but She-Hulk never had a like that was never.
Yeah,
really
no,
part
I
of
know
it.
that was even in the comics never part of her thing, but like,
Yeah, but Ms. Marvel, but by the end of her show, basically her whole family and all of her friends know.
yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's true. Spider-Man's like,
Spider-Man and Daredevil, I guess, as you said.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean I guess we know that the MCU version of Daredevil has a secret identity because when he shows up in She-Hulk, she unmasks him and he's like, "Come on,
Right.
man, I got this."
Oh, is that not true to the comics? The whole
Oh, it
lawyer
is.
alter
Yeah,
ego?
like yeah, it's very like. In fact,
so
again, like
basically, it's just people from New York.
Yeah, that's fair. New Yorkers can be kind of hard on people, I guess. I don't know.
or I guess rather the more street level ones who don't have money
Yeah.
to.
Yeah,
Pay for security.
which is that weird thing about Spider-Man because like he's a street level kind of, but at the same time he's like one of the most powerful superheroes in the Marvel canon too, depending on where you're at. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the future will tell us what becomes of secret identities. All right, we got
I
3
think
left. We should power through here.
all right,
Oh man.
Not a powering through kind of topic.
Batman the Animated Series Revisited. Emphasis on a shared continuity.
oh wow, yeah.
So what this is alluding to is that yes, Batman the Animated Series was very successful, defined who Batman was for a generation. But then that version of Batman went on to appear in a Superman show, and then those 2 shows led to a Justice League show and a Batman in the Future show and other shows, and it created this whole like cinematic universe but on TV that went on for like technically like 14 years all in.
Yeah. Which I think there's another interesting thing about Batman the Animated Series, which is what I thought you were talking about when you read that, because I'd forgotten the original context, was that like even a lot of like Batman characters in the comics and in the general consciousness got kind of defined by those. A little bit like, there's an entire generation who didn't realize that usually Spider-Man has web shooters and doesn't just shoot it out of himself, right? Because the Sam Raimi movies were so big and they did, that majorly different thing than any other Spider-Man had ever done, basically. But then everybody was like, oh, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't he be shooting it out of himself? It's totally normal, right? Because I remember, like, recently watching a video about, like, Batgirl and, like, how her character very much, like, had a bunch of different characteristics, but then was pretty strongly defined by Batman the Animated Series. And Batman the Animated Series created Harley Quinn, who is now like a staple.
Oh, really? Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, her first appearance was in Batman the Animated Series, and it's just now she's one of the most popular DC characters.
Yeah.
But the shared universe, like, I think it's one of those weird things where it's like, it's one of the things that makes me very sad, because it's like DC knows how to make an extended universe, a shared universe. They've done it before, and some of the TV shows were moving towards that as well, right? Like, I guess maybe they should have just kept playing to their strengths and do that only with TV shows and not try to like match the movie universe
Yeah.
the way that Marvel does. Because like, yeah, the CW shows have a similar, like, they were all a shared universe. They all appeared together, and like, obviously, it's a lot easier to do with animation, especially because like voice actors are ridiculous workaholics. Generally speaking,
Voices don't age the same way as faces.
yeah, well, that and just the fact that because they don't make the same amount of money, they tend to work more. Like, it's a unfortunate side effect of the difference in the industry, but it definitely is something like that. And like, I don't know, because Batman the Animated Series was so good and so big, like, it didn't just define like DC for a while. It also kind of like set the bar for what animation could be, right? Like, animated TV shows aimed at kids ish, but also aimed a little bit older, and also like being a little grittier, but still having a mainstream appeal. But so what are it was Batman the Animated Series, then the Batman and Superman, then Justice League, then Batman Beyond?
So it's kind of complicated, but basically, like, as Batman the Animated Series ended its original run, then they started doing Superman the Animated Series. And then during the second season of Superman, they started producing more episodes of Batman the Animated Series. But between Batman and Superman, they found a new animation style that was a lot simpler and less expensive to animate. So when they started doing more Batman episodes, the art style was similar, but a lot simpler and looked different. And those were technically called the New Batman Adventures. And it was during the time that they were doing the New Batman Adventures that they did an episode of Superman where Batman crossed over, and it was like their first meeting in this shared universe.
And then, if the animation style was different, was like the link that it was Kevin Conroy, or
most of the voice cast was the same. Like, if you look up the difference between Batman the Animated Series and the New Batman Adventures, it's like sharper lines, less details. Everyone looks a little thinner.
I don't think I really watched the New Adventures. Did they kind of reboot it in a sense of, like, even if they kept the same background stories, they reintroduced everybody, or was it meant to be a pure continuation of the animated series?
Like, continuity wise, it was meant to be a follow-up, and there's things that happen. I just gave you guys a link to a Google image thing that kind of shows you what the differences looked like. And then as both Superman and Batman were winding down, they wanted a show, like Warner, the Kids WB wanted a show where like a teenager was the superhero. And that led to them making Batman Beyond, which is like set in the future where Bruce Wayne's old and a young guy's Batman. And while that show was kind of wrapping up, that's when they were greenlit to do Justice League. And then Static Shock came on at the same time. And initially that wasn't in the shared universe. Like, that was just kind of its own separate thing that was being produced at the same time. And then they found a way to like bring it in because
was Teen Titans in there, like the original run?
No, it was not. Okay. That was always
because it does
separate.
have like a similar animation style too to it.
Similar enough, but it was always meant to be different.
Which makes sense too. Because I guess because Robin is still Dick Grayson, so it would mess with a lot of continuity from the other ones.
Yeah, because by the New Batman Adventures, Dick Grayson had become Nightwing. Like, he had kind of given up on being Robin, and then there's like a new Kid Robin.
Oh, okay, that would explain things too. Because I was about to say that in just looking at these pictures you sent through the Google link, like, the biggest difference is that Robin looks way more kiddish, but he's actually a different character. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And he is younger, right? Because in Batman the Animated Series, Dick Grayson is in college, right?
Yeah, so like this new Robin's like 13 years old.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So yeah, they did a very impressive job, like, over the course of 12 years, basically trying to retain as much of the same cast as possible. It's basically like what the MCU ended up becoming in terms of a shared continuity across different shows and
movies. Like,
a lot of direct-to-video movies and some video games.
Because Mask of the Phantasm, Batman Beyond Return of the Joker were part of that. There's another big one. I can't remember.
Yeah, so and it was really the first time that was ever done, where like, different TV shows were actually like in a shared universe with each
Yeah.
other, and the characters would cross over like that outside like,
Other than spin-offs.
other than like spin-offs or like Hanna-Barbera type things.
But was the Scooby-Doo Batman spin-off before, or like, because I feel like the Batman Scooby-Doo spin-off was around the time of Batman the Animated Series.
There was a Scooby-Doo Batman, or like there was a Scooby-Doo show that Batman and Robin were in during the time Super Friends was on
Okay.
TV in like the
No,
70s.
I thought it was like I thought there was a Scooby-Doo movie that had Superman and Batman in it.
No, there
I
was
could be wrong.
there was a direct-to-video Batman Scooby-Doo movie in like 2018 that was like featuring the Brave and the Bold version of Batman.
Okay, maybe that's what I was thinking about, but I thought it was.
There's also a movie like as a direct-to-video thing they released in 2004, I think it was called Scooby-Doo Meets Batman, but it was basically just the two episodes of the new Scooby-Doo movies from the 70s that had Batman and Robin in it.
I like it.
But you mentioned Teen Titans. I guess one thing we can share here is the Bat embargo. And Professor Ed is giving me like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this.
So there were, so Justice League was a show that they made, and because Batman and Superman had their own shows prior to this, they brought in villains from Batman and Superman to be part of the Justice League. Famously, like Mark Hamill's Joker, Harley Quinn, Clayface, just to name a few Batman villains who showed up in Justice League. But then when they started doing the sequel series, Justice League Unlimited, Kids WB, which is over here, Justice League was airing on Cartoon Network, but Kids WB over here greenlit a new Batman show, which was just called The Batman. And this led to this thing called the Bat embargo, which essentially said only one show is allowed to use Batman characters because we don't want to confuse kids. So Justice League Unlimited was allowed to use Batman himself because he was an established character on that show, but no other Batman sidekicks or villains, even though they had, they existed in that universe, were not allowed to be on the show because they wanted them to be preserved for the Batman. And at the same time, also on Cartoon Network with Justice League Unlimited was the Teen Titans show, which started, in which Robin was meant to be a main character. So the Batman couldn't use Robin because Robin was on Teen Titans, and Justice League only couldn't use Robin because, or
could they have not just used a different Robin? Like, there are 6 different Robins. Why didn't they just use not Dick Grayson?
Because they thought kids would be confused. And to be fair, the first time I saw the Batman on TV, I was like, I was like 12, 13 years old, but it was the first time I'd ever seen Batman voiced by someone other than Kevin Conroy. And I was like, whoa, this is weird. Like, I mean, there's like the Batman from like the 70s I'd seen on like Super Friends and stuff, which of course I was like, in my brain, that's somehow separate. Because I'd like followed him through all this stuff. It's like, that's what Batman sounds like. And all of a sudden here's a new show where it's about a younger Batman and he's voiced by someone different. So it wasn't until Teen Titans ended that the Batman was allowed to include Robin. So that show famously actually had Batgirl show up first before Robin.
Wow.
And then Justice League Unlimited ended without any other Batman characters making appearances.
Again, couldn't have Nightwing been there? Like,
you would think, but because he was a Batman character, he wasn't allowed.
Although they would have called him Dick in both that and in Teen Titans, so I guess.
I was wondering what the argument was going to be about why kids would get confused, but when you brought up the voice acting, that does make sense. Like, if you're going to have the same character, but they're voiced by different people, that would be, I guess, confusing to children.
I mean, to some extent, but like, I don't know.
If they're different characters,
shows.
like you said. Yeah, that's true. But if they're meant to be in the same universe.
Well, that's the thing. These were meant to be different. So, and like, I'll show you what the Batman looked like. It had a very different art style. Like, you'd have a hard time confusing this with Justice League.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I didn't watch it, but I remember seeing some of that.
Oh,
yeah, that's the show that had the really weird Joker,
Yes.
right?
He had dreadlocks.
Yeah, that was weird.
Huh.
But I digress. The DC animated universe, as it's called, pioneered shared continuity long before the MCU ever got around to it.
Yeah.
And before DC started doing it in their TV shows, which they should have kept doing. Because clearly the transition from TV show to movie didn't work out for most of it. I mean, for Marvel,
gosh, this is awkward.
Oh.
Whom is the best guest you've had on this podcast?
Oh. Well, we shouldn't really participate because it's clearly a question for you.
I know how this happened. Professor F, you might remember we had a barbecue once at our house and for some students who were on a mission, and
Okay. Oh yeah.
we brought out the bat jar to show them, and two of the participants took the jar and wrote random things in here. So
were those two? Were they sisters?
They were sisters.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, I remember them.
Oh, I think I might know who you guys are talking about.
They have a famous, like in the Catholic world, I guess you could say they have a famous last name. And there's 7 of them in their family.
Yeah, okay. I do know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
My parents know their parents.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
So anyway, if I look at like the Bat Jar community chat here.
Well, it depends how you define it. If you talk about the guest that got you the most views or the most listens.
Then it would...
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Do we? If
But
we put
that's
all
only-
the episodes
that's
that I'm
true.
the co-host,
I was thinking, cumulative versus one-off.
Actually,
That's true.
if we took all the downloads of episodes that I don't know how well are the episodes doing? Would Pixel Patch have more downloads than me, or? Probably
I don't know, man. That'd be I'd have to
Asian John.
hire
Well,
someone.
You'd have to do a
Agent
lot
John
of
was on
statistics.
for the longest,
Yeah.
probably.
Well, and this is the thing. I'm clarifying a difference between guests and
Oh
co-hosts.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So Pixel Patch and Asian John
But
and
they
you.
did. Pixel Patch was a guest, and so was I before being
Yes.
co-host.
So I would have to like consider. Oh, like they were guests that became co-hosts like that. Maybe that makes them the best guests I've had.
They never left.
Oh man, this is so hard. I mean, it's like I think of some of our guests, like Ben the Movie Buff, who was started as a guest, became a full-time co-host for a while.
And
He
then
actually works in the film industry, so hearing his
Knowledgeable.
insights, especially when we're talking about Hallmark movies, and he's like, I actually worked on some of those Hallmark movies.
I mean, he also guest starred, I think, on more episodes than probably anybody else, right? Because even when he wasn't the regular, there was a while at the beginning of lockdown because he wasn't working, where he was like every week he was guest starring as well.
Yeah, so he has that claim to fame. I think of like TC Laugh, who has been involved in some of our musical episodes, who has actually worked in theater production. So, she's an accomplished actress. I think of Dee Dee, who is like a mom of like 3 kids, and before we had Zencaster, like maneuvered her life so that I could come over to her house and record episodes with her.
That's right.
That's pretty hardcore.
Naturally, I'm gonna mention my wife Tater Tot, who I'd be remiss to not mention her and contributions. We got, of course, Mjolnir. I think she probably wins the award for like most guest appearances without actually becoming a co-host.
Oh, without becoming yeah, that's true. There was a time where we talked about making her an official co-host, but it just never happened. I think Jam Jam got in the way of that.
Being married to a co-host, does that make you like assistant co-host, or just assistant to the co-host? Or
I mean, that was kind of what was happening, is that she was on a lot of the time because I was doing this every week.
Yeah.
And
I'm trying to think. We've had a number of guests who've only done one episode.
Yeah. How many
But
do
that
you
would
think
be
you've had?
awesome.
How many do you think you've had, Joe?
I'm trying to
over
count.
30? I remember at your wedding, they had people stand up who have been involved, and it was a significant portion of the room that stood up who's ever been on your podcast.
Yeah, like I'm counting at least 31 here.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I mean, both my younger brothers have been on the show. Whenever Minty Python comes on, that's a good time.
Oh yeah. He's a little
He's just
minty.
got some spicy takes that he just sort of throws out there for us to. Another one that just sort of comes to mind here, the Bratasian. He was like a friend of Asian John's who lived in England, lived in the United Kingdom, and then like was from the same part of Asia as Asian John. And he just happened to be visiting the week that we saw Blade Runner 2049. And so he went and saw the movie with us
Nice.
and then recorded the episode with us afterwards.
Nice.
So yeah, that's
The
a
greatest
lot of different.
guest of the podcast is clearly Average Joe because he's been on every episode.
No, but I'm not a guest. Also, I've jokingly had Optimus Prime on the podcast a few times whenever we talk about Transformers, because I used to have an Optimus Prime toy that would be
I
like,
was wondering if
"Oh,
that's what you
Optimus Prime."
Oh yeah. Wait. What's the sword when you change co-host?
Oh yeah,
That's the best guest.
Is that the Power Ranger sword?
I think so.
yeah, but I don't consider that that's not a. It never said anything.
It doesn't? Doesn't it say things?
Well, it does say things, but it didn't
exactly.
say anything to contribute to the.
Well, I did.
And like we've actually had some like unborn children as podcast co-hosts or guests because like their mothers were pregnant when they were on.
Yeah, I don't think they
Dee
contribute
brought
too
like
much.
an 8-month-old to a recording once.
Nice.
So
Jam has babbled in the microphone before.
she has, yeah, she's been around a lot. Maybe the best guest is the Bat Jar itself.
Mm.
The strong silent type.
Maybe the best guest is the guest inside of us all along. Maybe the
Oh
best
my
guest
gosh.
is the power of friendship.
All right, so you guys can clearly see the jar is empty. I've pulled out the last topic.
It's One Piece, the last 600 chapters.
This is another one from the sisters that snuck in here. The origin of chicken nuggets.
What? Is this?
Is this a nerd or geeky thing?
Well,
Say, like, I
It's
feel that would
definitely
be an
pop culture.
interesting.
It's definitely
Yeah,
pop culture.
it would be an interesting podcast episode. Not exactly in our purview, I think, and would require actual research.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, anyone want to Google this right now?
I'll look it up because like I feel like this is a good way to kind of like talk about the show in general, is that we have put a lot of effort into trying to nail down what is nerdy, what is geeky, what a nerd is, what a geek is. And I think through all our conversations about nerdy, geeky, sporty stuff is that we've made the case that you can be a nerd or a geek about basically anything.
Yep.
Ooh.
Uh,
How do you feel about chicken nuggets, Professor F?
I have not had them in quite a while because for the last about 20 years now I've been gluten free and try to stick to that pretty regularly. But prior to that dietary change, I was a big fan. Any excuse to dip something in that sweet and sour sauce, is that what it was? Is that the sauce? For a while as a kid, I was dipping my fries in that. I suppose I could still do that.
If
My
Tater
daughter
Tot wasn't asleep right
loves
now,
it
I
right
would go
now.
and get her because she loves chicken nuggets. In fact, like her and her best friend
That's right.
have recently said they prefer chicken nuggets to steak.
I'm just remembering. At my brother's wedding this past fall, you guys was your wife there?
Yep.
Was it yeah, she was there, and her.
Oh, Philatron. We forgot to mention Philatron. He's
yes.
also on the show.
I was thinking that. I was thinking he'd been on. Couldn't remember. But did you not make a chicken nugget run at the request of one of
We did, yes, but that
Laura's good friends? And
yes.
fries for the yeah,
I mean,
that was fun.
that's funny that you should mention that. There's a wedding. When my brother got married, they got the limo to stop at McDonald's so that
Yeah, we got
and chicken nuggets are like the only thing I eat at McDonald's now because
them to
like,
come to
all food
us.
from McDonald's is disgusting.
That sustained us for the photo shoot
Ah.
for the wedding party.
So she loves chicken nuggets. She would rather eat chicken nuggets than like a good like we went to the Keg last week and had the steak, and she's like, I would have preferred chicken nuggets
They probably
Okay,
have a
but
kids
chicken
meal.
nuggets are like chicken like.
and not tenders.
Just-
She likes
like
nuggets.
the
I like
oh,
chicken
wow.
The
tenders.
trademark
Okay.
like McDonald's.
Yeah, because like fried
version.
chicken or chicken tenders, I'm okay with. Chicken nuggets, that really don't like. Even though I eat them at McDonald's because I dislike them less than the rest of their items, except for breakfast.
All right, Beeper, you found the history.
I found
Yeah,
the Wikipedia
I did
page
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
of,
All right,
of
well,
chicken nuggets.
read it away for us here.
The chicken nugget was invented in the 1950s by Robert C. Baker, a food science professor at Cornell University, and published as an unpatented academic work. This bite-sized piece of chicken coated in batter and then deep fried was called the Chicken Crispy by Baker and his associates. Then I don't know the rest of it. So what made it special is he solved the problems of being able to clump ground meat together without skin, and producing a batter coating that would help them to be both deep fried and frozen without being detached. And apparently that's what he solved. That he made it possible to make chicken nuggets of any shape by coating the meat in vinegar, salt grains, and milk powder to make it hold together, then using egg and grain-based batter that could be fried as well as frozen. Which I guess, when you think about it, is actually a really big thing. Like, being able to make food that can be both frozen and fried is, like, a pretty big deal for the fast food industry.
Yep.
Like, that's... So I guess it's pretty impressive that he did that.
Now, what was the exact phrasing of the question, though? Was it chicken nuggets or McNuggets?
It just says origin of chicken nuggets.
Okay, because there's a separate Wikipedia page for chicken McNuggets, which were not developed until the late 1970s. I don't know. I just kept scrolling on the Google search. So those didn't come about till the late 1970s. So that's a long time afterwards.
Yeah.
You'd think that they would have caught on right away, and McDonald's would have scooped that up in no time.
And ironically, it says that Robert Baker was born in Kentucky.
Oh, well, there you go. Maybe he just...
due to his contributions to the poultry sciences, he was a member of the American Poultry Hall of Fame.
Wow. Oh. Yeah, I mean, I think he should be. That seems fair.
I mean, for better or for worse, he did change the industry and the way that a chicken delivery system.
So apparently, chicken McNuggets were made available in select markets in 1981. So they were conceived in the late 70s, made available in select markets in 81, and then worldwide in 83, after correcting a supply issue. Changed in 2016. The formula was changed in 2016 to remove artificial preservatives and improve the nutritional value.
And the chicken fingers page doesn't mention a date. It just says they became popular. No, they were first made in 1974. So the idea of chicken nuggets predates chicken fingers, or I would say chicken tenders, by it sounds like almost a decade, which is interesting. You would think that it's interesting that the nugget came like 20 years earlier.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it's that long, but also if you think about like the amount of like chicken nugget, like, because you got dinosaur chicken nuggets, you got like, all different shapes and sizes, which apparently is part of Baker's innovation, was being able to make different shapes. But maybe I don't know. Like, I feel like chicken tenders, like having worked in a fast food restaurant, they're a lot less. They feel like it's a lot less convenient to pack, right? Because things that are elongated don't, need to be packed in a specific way and stored in a specific way. Whereas I feel like nuggets can just be put anywhere in any direction and it still would work just as well. That's probably part of it.
Yeah. Do they not have gluten-free versions of chicken nuggets?
Well, not at McDonald's, but I'm sure somewhere someone has developed it.
Probably, but it is kind of like...
You can do batter. Actually, they're getting better with batter. More and more places I've been to will do like fish and chips. There's a couple in PEI that I've been to now that do gluten-free fish and chips that aren't half bad.
Half bad.
Yeah.
What I've noticed in recent years is like everyone seems to be like, you're right, McDonald's is famous for the chicken McNuggets. But I've noticed like Wendy's, Popeyes, like a lot of places have really like in recent years like come up with their own version of chicken nuggets. It seems like, I don't know what it is. It's like this generation of like eating in your car and on the go, and nuggets are easy to eat, that everyone's kind of jumping on the nugget train.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're certainly less messy than a hamburger when you're driving.
Yeah, that's true.
Popcorn shrimp.
Why haven't they made like beef nuggets. Just like burger
Well-
patties that are deep fried and battered.
Maybe you can
McDonald's
come up with
had
beef pork
this thing
nuggets.
called the
Oh.
Mac wrap for a while that I loved. It was like all the contents of a Big Mac inside of a tortilla wrap.
Oh, I see.
Interesting.
It must have not sold well because they've never brought it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of things over the years. The McPizzas. Didn't they have lobster in certain parts of the East Coast, I think?
Yeah,
Or maybe they
Yeah.
still do.
I think the thing about McDonald's too is that they try a bunch of things, but like I feel like Wendy's just like randomly has stuff, and they're like, but it's always meant to be a limited time thing,
Yeah.
and then sometimes, but very rarely, does it actually enter the menu. I think that's the way to go. It's just like limited time, so people will buy it anyways. But
Yeah.
the one chicken thing I remember was when A&W started doing the chubby chicken. They were like bigger and flat, kind of like they were kind of like chicken tenders, but kind of flattened so they were wider, but maybe not as thick as other ones.
I wonder if chicken burgers are essentially an enlarged nugget, like if they're put together in that same way, or if it's more just
I
a
feel like
slice
they
of
are,
breast. Yeah.
Because again, I did work at Wendy's for a couple years, and like the grilled chicken was definitely like seemed like it was cut out of a breast rather than like held together like a patty, but the other
Mhm.
ones I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I feel like it might depend. It might be like if I feel like if Popeyes has it, then it's more likely to be like a slice off of breast because they do work with more whole pieces of chicken.
Yeah.
But McDonald's it probably is an elongated nugget.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That's what they have, right? That's what like because at some point I
And it's probably
production
cheaper.
line is what you want to
There'd
do.
be less waste. You're not having like these leftover parts of a breast that aren't big enough for a burger. You just throw it into the clumping mechanism. Like you just clump it into another burger. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm now digging into McNuggets, and there's like there was like a lawsuit about questions like how much of the chicken, like the processed chicken that's all shredded up and put into McNuggets is actually chicken.
Like the what was it the horse meat and the meatballs at IKEA kind of thing.
I didn't know about that until now, but
Oh, I'm not sure if it was actually true.
Yeah.
I think it was just like some people started making that assumption, and then or like there was a big story. Although to be fair, like would it really be that big of a deal? Like if it's it's like that. I was listening to a podcast recently that had like talked about how there is a certain acceptable quantity of insect matter in a bunch
right.
of like different
That's right. Yeah. I've heard
products that the FDA is okay with,
that.
and
Yeah.
it's higher than you'd think it is.
Yeah.
well,
Because,
I'm
well,
looking at the
yeah.
McNuggets page. There's like a whole 3-paragraph section called criticism. So I mean, like regular chicken nuggets don't seem to have any issues. It's just the McNuggets, maybe because they're the most popular.
Or
I guess
it's-
that's pretty.
Yeah, it's easier to target one specific than the variety
Yeah,
of
because
quality
the
out there.
concept of McNuggets, of chicken nuggets, could be done very differently in different places. But
Mhm.
McDonald's kind of has this whole, unified chain kind of thing.
Now, in true Batjar fashion, like I brought it up earlier, could you be nerdy or geeky about chicken nuggets?
I mean, I think so, right?
Yeah.
Like not just because there are a lot of like random pop culture references that have to do with chicken nuggets, like Rick and Morty has the Mulan Szechuan sauce arc, but even so, like you just like, I think you can be a foodie, which is basically a food geek, and I feel like some foodies would go hard into chicken nuggets. So yeah, I think you can be a geek about chicken nuggets.
If I remember
Nerd,
correctly,
maybe less.
a nerd is someone who just takes pleasure in kind of amassing knowledge and enjoying it for themselves. The geek wants to share that with others and have more social experience. Yeah, I could see someone definitely proclaiming the wonders of chicken nuggets to others, or having a collectibles collection of chicken nuggets paraphernalia from over the decades. Like
I do feel that latter one works better with chicken McNuggets, with McNuggets
definitely.
than nuggets. But
Well, yeah, because then you get into like being a McDonald's fan and
Yeah.
fast food loyalty. And
yeah,
I will say, podcast guest Michael Andrew bought for his wife a giant chicken nugget pillow.
That sounds fun.
like a pillow in the shape of a chicken nugget.
Yes, and it's
Hopefully.
like the pillowcase looks like the coating of a
That's
chicken
awesome.
nugget.
I mean, it takes all sorts to make the world go round.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
the expression. I'm French. I don't know English expressions.
It gets the gist of it. I don't know it any better. So, Average Joe, do you think when you started this podcast all these years ago that this is how the Bat Jar would end, with a dissection of nuggets?
Definitely not. But we have covered a lot of ground in this one conversation. I think this is a perfect way to cap
Yeah.
things off. And maybe it's still my Disney cruise hangover, but I'm really leaning towards making our penultimate episode the like Disney playoffs, or whatever
Yeah.
you want to call them.
I think that's a better idea than what I had. My idea was making the penultimate about kind of like disappointing finales
Ooh.
and why a lot of finales are disappointing.
Well, maybe we can find a way to like have that be the opener.
Okay, we'll see.
But thanks, Professor F, for coming.
Yeah,
And
glad I returned.
and for everyone else, if we got 2 episodes left, so
You can't
we'll
send
be,
anything in the Bat Jar anymore because we're done.
yeah,
it's
the
empty.
bat jar is empty.
Close
It'll
it.
just now.
Average Joe is about to smash it so that it can never be used again.
No, I'm not going to do that. If anything, I'm going to try and convince Tater Tot let us have it be a cookie jar in our home.
Either that
Well,
or
you
put
know
it on
the
a
best
shelf
way to
and
convince
commemorate it.
somebody to have a cookie jar? Make cookies.
Yeah.
So bake cookies tomorrow and then be like, oh, Tater Tots, I'm sorry. We need a place to put all these cookies I just baked. Here, it's your favorite kind. And then she's like, well, I guess we can have the bat jar for them. And then you just you got to keep making cookies for the first like month. And then she forgets about it. And then it's there.
Smart.
It's a staple of your kitchen.
So come back to the Bat Jar podcast in 2 weeks when we basically take what we think were the best of Disney animated movies of each era and decide what comes out on top. And until that time, I'm Average Joe.
That'd be for Caribs.
I'm Professor F.
Catch you on the flip side.
I bet you Lion King wins.
À plus tard.